Hey, what is up everybody, Blades for here, and today for you guys another video of Persona 5X. Inside today's video, guys, we're going to be going ahead and going over is power creep a thing in P5X here. Now, I've made this video I think about once or twice, and it's been different periods of time, whether it was last year or the very beginning of this year, but this has been a common thing that a lot of people have been asking me, and quite often. In fact, even today, which at the point of this recording was 5:48 p.m. EST here on a Monday morning here, even today after the stream, we've actually asked this question again here. Now, this has been something that a lot of you guys really want to, of course, know the answer to. So this is probably going to be the final time I'm going to be going over this here, mainly because it's always the same a little bit answer with this one here. So if you guys are interested in the video, be sure to sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. And as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really does help me out a lot here. I'm going to continue on pressing on forward with this. Now, I said continue, but I don't know why I tried to say goodbye, and it was some weird freaking nonsense. But no matter that, let's go ahead and get into it. So, when it comes down to at least P5X, the actual amount of just, I guess you guys can say with power creep, right, does not exist. And let me lay down the foundation of why, right? P5X itself is a game that is based on the attributes and the roles very heavily here, right? Attributes play a course inside of different fights, seeing that there's always going to be mobs, and this has always been a thing with P5 where they're going to be weak, they're going to be null, they're going to be resistant to certain things, right? It's never going to be on how these elements react together, right? It's not really about element reactions, it's more or less about how the content is presented forward to you. So there may be mobs that are only weak to bless units but have a resistance to let's say if you do have an electric character inside of a bless team, the resistance to electric. So really how this game works with its power creep is dependent on attributes. Now, this does not mean, oh, if I run a mono team, I have to run mono team, right? No, this goes into an aspect of, to power creep a unit, it revolves around its content. It also revolves around how often that character is going to be used, which the characters in P5X are always buffed usually. They get their buffs fairly often, whether it's 4 stars or 5 stars, and they get optimized with the content at hand. They do cycle out a decent bit, though I do wish the devs, hopefully if they listen to this video, do cycle out some of the older characters a little bit more. They do cycle them out pretty often to at least let characters shine. The only way to fully power creep a unit is to, for example, take a character that is a blessed AoE DPS and have another character who is a blessed AoE DPS. The reason I put this is because there's going to be content where you're going to primarily need an AoE DPS. That content, you may need a blessed AoE DPS, right? Or there's going to be content where you're going to need a single target. That content, you're going to need a blessed single target, right? And that, or more or less, is how the actual comparison starts to begin, right? You can't really compare an AoE blessed character to a single target DPS blessed character, right? That's not how that works. You have to compare them to the same rolling and the same actual typing, right? And with this in mind, we don't have characters that have overlap like that. I want to say the only things that have overlapped has been our fire characters, and that has been Rin, Chinese New Year, and On, Chinese New Year. And even with these two, power creep doesn't fully exist, because On here is a standard character. You're usually, especially if you've been investing to her from at least day one, you'll get her A6. A lot of free-to-plays get a couple of these characters, if not a lot of these standard characters, A6 fairly quickly, just due to how at least generous this game can be. So let's take an A6 On to an A0 Chinese New Year Rin, right? Well, A0 Chinese New Year Rin out DPSs an A6 On. Now we have to keep in mind, A6 On reigns supreme from 1.0 for the fire DPSs all the way to her actual release, which was the beginning of this year, right? So On has had a full year of reigning supreme. It's only natural that a newer character is going to power creep her. Well, here's the thing about this. Power creeping doesn't really exist with this due to a new character that dropped. That is going to be Anj. Now, this doesn't bring in that whole fact of Star Rail where, oh, so if a Harmony unit drops, that does this, you have to have, no, we're not doing that. Because how this character works is not only specific for that one character to buff that one said character, right? This character doesn't only just buff specifically on. No, this character itself has actually made multiple teams, multiple attributes, all viable. And that's due to the extra turn process that she has. Well, while having this character, A6 Ange can out DPS a A0 version of Chinese New Year Ren. And this is a huge feat, seeing that An is a standard unit once again versus a limited character who quite literally can deal her damage at A6 at A0. Well, due to this character here, who has made multiple characters throughout the game, like that are in the game, including Skull and multitude other characters, viable, An actually deals more damage than Ren. Now, based on the teams that you have revolved around them, it does depend on the content that you do. So you don't fully power creep either or character, it just depends on the situation at hand, right? That's how that usually works, right? And with this in mind, if you did want to just say, okay, well, if we're just taking the basis of A6 An versus A0 Ren, Ren still just outdoes her, because without Ange, easily Ren's gonna outdo that. Well, that's just how that goes, right? It's been a full year. Eventually these characters are going to have, of course, rust on them at that point in time, and even then the devs will continually buff. That is another thing that kind of keeps power creep out of the way. When a character gets so old, the devs come in, they slowly do buffs. They do buffs to like 4-star characters and 5-star characters, which makes it even harder to power creep these said units. The only thing that makes you want to get these said units day one, or at least get some of these units, if you are deciding to do SOS, which is the ranking mode, in which I've shown this in tons of my videos here, being the ranking mode, in which usually the first time a unit does drop, it is catered to that ranking, right? It's catered to this ranking mode. Well, the good part about this, even for free to plays, you don't even have to wholeheartedly focus on this ranking mode due to the amount of actual prizes that are in here. Nothing is full-heartedly competitive inside of this, and you guys can see with the gem amount, 175 for being a whole ranking down, a whole ranking section down, you still get 175. Being another whole release section down, you're still 175, and being 3 whole ranking downs, you're still 175. Nothing really changes, so there's not a huge competition, furtherly incentivizing that power creep isn't the real thing. There's nothing to be really ultra competitive about that would make you want a power creep, or that would make you need a power creep. Even in game, you don't need all the best units, you don't need all these dupes in order to complete it. Therefore, with this in mind, power creep is not really needed. You can still utilize whoever you want, whenever you want, to get past all the in-game content. In fact, even the newest palace that recently came out, which is Palace 4, or I guess some people say Palace 5, even the newest palace that came out, you can beat with all a 4-star team. So power creep does not really exist inside of this game. It more or less comes down to, do you know your characters best, and how can you execute at least that action with these said units? So that's pretty much how this is gonna go. This is something I've really been kind of getting nagged on about a lot. A lot of people have really thought, no, power creep has to exist. This is one of the few gotchas I can tell you. Power creep doesn't really exist here. There's no PvP, so there's no real need to really hardcore push power creep. And in PvE standards, yes, there is some hard content. Yes, there isn't some hard content. And even when there is or isn't, you don't have to push for power creep with any character. This comes down, do you know your units best, and do you know how to synergize with them the best? Now, I will say, support wise, if you wanted to at least argue what about supports can get a little bit iffy, but you don't even have to pull every last one of the supports. In fact, there are people who are still using the 4-star supports, whom one of which being Leon is still good today, where there isn't really a power creep of this character. There is a different character that does what he does that is a little bit better, but definitely doesn't mean that you need that unit in order to complete any content. So therefore, at this point in time, I would like to say for a lot of you guys, power creeping really isn't a huge problem, nor really exists inside of P5X. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I'm very at least interested to see what you guys want to hear, or at least on what you guys want to ask here, because I know some of you guys are going to be like, What about single target versus single target, but they're different attributes? Once again, this game is very attribute driven, very team, at least synergizing driven, and knowing your team the best. Really comparing different attributes won't really be a good, at least a marker, seeing that based on the attribute that the monster is gonna make you deal more damage with that specific attribute character. But I'm interested to know, so let me know down below in the comment section. Till next time, everybody, stay safe, stay sharp. Peace out.